Welcome to memoQ Talks, where we talk to industry leaders about their experiences, lessons learned, and what works best across all areas of localization. Now here's your host.
Hello everybody, welcome to memoQ Talks. My name is Mark Schreiner and I'll be your host for this episode of memoQ Talks. Today we're going to be talking to Rick Antezana, who is a friend, a neighbor, and also the CEO of Dynamic Language. Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. Great to be here, Mark. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to have you on the show. Eventually, I want to talk to you about sales and marketing because we've had a couple of conversations and collaborations specifically on that topic. But before we do a deep dive on kind of sales and marketing in the context of running a language service provider, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how did you get your start in the language services industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to cover that a little bit. So my company, it's a family-owned business, and it's been around for a long time, since 1985. The genesis of it basically is that my mother was a linguist. I mean, she spoke and was fairly expert in 4 different languages. And when she moved from Bolivia to the United States, she started as a language instructor. That was kind of her background, and mostly on the corporate side. And as she found out when she kind of followed down the career path of this language instruction thing to administration, managing an office, etc., the organization that she was with at the time didn't have any interest in going beyond language instruction. But she, at that time, saw a need in the market for more than language instruction. And so she and my father stepped out on a limb and decided to pursue this opportunity of looking at translation as a service, interpreting. Those are kind of the 2 main things at the time that they saw potential in. And so, they went out on a limb and made it happen. They created a business, and it has grown ever since from 1985. So myself, I joined the company during my college years. It was in the early 90s. So at first, I mean, the industry has changed so much since then. I mean, the fax machines and linotronic typesetting, all these things. I was doing a lot of things from like desktop publishing. I did physical deliveries of client files, which at the time was a thing that doesn't really happen anymore, of course. Project management. I started dabbling in marketing and sales and things like that over the years, but things really evolved over time. For the last handful of years, I've been the CEO, and so my perspective has changed quite a bit. And I think having the responsibility of the organization that we have right now, it's exciting and it's fun in many ways, but it's a huge challenge in other ways. And it's all about finding, in my mind, it's about finding the optimal solution for the challenges that are put in front of us, right? And doing that in a collaborative and team-focused way. And, so far, I think things the last couple of years, as we've bounced back from the pandemic, things are going well, and we're excited about the future.
That's awesome. Hey, one of the challenges when people start a business and develop themselves is they get to different stages and they have to kind of figure out how do you get to the next stage, right? Because there's no playbook for what they're doing. Yeah. And they're kind of figuring out as they go. And I'm sure that you and your family have kind of gone through that as well. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about that. But also, I'm guessing, have you spent your whole career inside Dynamic Language, or have you worked outside?
Somewhat outside. So I would say, like during college, I worked in Alaska in a salmon cannery for a couple of summers. That's distinctly outside of Dynamic.
Definitely outside the industry.
Yes, it was a great experience and something I really treasure. I really enjoyed my time up there in the Great White North. And then also I worked for a company that it was called Progressive Media, and basically they sold how-to guides on how to get a job, either working in the salmon fishing industry up in Alaska, so I had some experience in that, and they also sold guides on how to get jobs in the cruise industry. So it was kind of a sales and advisory gig or whatever. But the rest of my time has all been with Dynamic. I'd say I've been pretty insular from that perspective. I have tried to acquire a lot of different education along the way, but my degree is in political science. It's not like it has a whole lot to do with managing a company or anything like that. So a lot of it has been on the job training. And, truth be told, though, my mom has been, well, both my parents have been mentors, but my mom in particular has been somebody whose shoes I want to step into and follow her lead. And so, yeah, we're still in very close contact. Both my parents are very supportive. And so, yeah, sometimes I do need to lean on them for advice and ideas and things like that.
Well, one of the things that I like talking to you, one of the reasons I like talking to you is that you're always looking out for different ideas and different things, and specifically on the topic of business development and marketing. And we're going to get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, because if you haven't spent much time outside the industry, or in even in the industry but with different companies,
Right.
I'm wondering, what's your learning resource? Because as a CEO, you're expected to know, and obviously you had an amazing apprenticeship in terms of
Hmm.
you worked a variety of jobs inside the company
Right.
as you were, growing up. But aside from that, I mean, is it like the involvement in different associations or anything like
Mhm.
that? Has that been beneficial or?
Oh, for sure. That's definitely been a factor. And I think industry associations have been helpful. I think about the Association of Language Companies. I learned a lot through participating in that. GALA is a great association where I'm still, I'm very engaged and try to pick up knowledge from there. So a lot of it's through colleagues, some of it's through consultants. But I also took a couple of continuing education programs through the University of Washington, through Stanford University. There have been a couple opportunities to do things like that. And so, and even at this advanced age at which I find myself, I'm not opposed to the idea of doing even more advanced education. Like, is it time for me to finally step up and get an MBA? I don't know. I'm not opposed to it, but I also need to budget my time and really figure out what's the payoff going to be to doing some of these things. And so I think many of my lessons have been learned through the school of hard knocks, uh,
Mhm.
and it's been painful but gradual. Sorry, painful but valuable. And so, yeah, I would say that, to back to your original question, as far as how, as far as running a company and how do you find the right solutions and everything like that. And for me, it comes down to, it's a combination of people, process, and technology, really. And I think that's kind of the foundation of how I, philosophically speaking, try to find the right way to compete in this industry, right? And so it's, finding the right people, putting them in the right positions, helping them to stay in their own lane, and for us to operate as frictionless as possible. From a process standpoint, that's a major, major change that we made since I took over the helm, is that I really wanted us to be organized from a process standpoint. So ISO certification is a big part of what we offer, and certainly that's how we tend to interface well with like our enterprise level customers who have expectations when it comes to, standardized processes, et cetera. But then certainly when we adopted the EOS management system, that was a big deal for us, and it really helps us to get out of just being um, responsive to everything that's happening in our inbox. It's about identifying larger goals and the different steps that are needed to get to those big goals, and chipping away at them on a week by week basis, and holding each other within our senior leadership team, and really across the company, everybody holding each other accountable. I think for us, that's made a massive difference. And then, of course, from a technology standpoint, like, what are the systems that we really need that are going to be difference makers? Which ones are worth the investment? Because yeah, as you know, Mark, software is not cheap. And
It's
as
an
users of,
investment, Rick. It's an investment.
okay, I will accept that. And you're right, it is an investment. It's an investment not only in revenue but in time. And when you pick the right partners for that, you can really, really reap the rewards. So yeah, I'm a big believer in picking the right software. But if after investing a bunch of time and revenue into it, if it's not working, I'm also not afraid of change. And so I think for me, that's something where I guess that is perhaps a criticism that my team would probably pick on me a little bit on, and just say, okay, can we just keep things steady for a little while without changing things? I would say, yeah, probably last year we've had a little bit more stability, um, because we're finding the right solutions, we're finding the right people. Uh, the processes are becoming a little bit more kind of standardized. So yeah, it's kind of where we are.
You've answered like my next three questions all with that, which is perfect. Which is perfect, and it kind of teed things up when you talked about, you have to be
Yeah,
careful and about how you budget your time, which
yeah,
does bring me back to a question you kind of already answered. But
hmm,
with your CEO hat on, I mean, you
yeah,
have to look at operations, you have to look at business growth, which will be the sales and marketing thing, which we're going to dig into. But you also have to look at the longer term strategy, and I'm assuming then this EOS system, which by the way I have to claim ignorance on, and maybe you could
yeah.
talk a little bit more about that, is
Hmm.
something that kind of guides you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it probably does make sense to elaborate a little bit on it right now. So EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's very much based on a book called Traction, which for me has been pretty eye-opening. And I think there's a lot of smaller companies like ourselves in a lot of different industries that utilize this, but it's not the only one out there. I mean, 3DX is another system that we've taken a look at, and honestly, many of these systems operate in a similar way. But really, it's the discipline of identifying your big goals and breaking those down into smaller tasks and goals and attacking those on a regular basis, because nothing is going to get solved unless you give it attention, right? So that's kind of what it comes down to. But yeah, back to what you were talking about as far as like how to, figure out where to apply your time. It's that's such a challenge, honestly, because there's so many ways to do it. For us, I think really giving my direct reports a set amount of time on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever basis it is for planning. Performance management is a big deal. And when we take a look at one-on-ones and check-ins, those tend to create highlight moments where a light is shined on something that is a challenge or something that we need to work on. I will say that we've got a great admin for our senior leadership team that really helps me personally with organizing time and making sure that things that are in the big picture task list do not fall off the radar. So that in and of itself is really helpful, because let's be real, like we're not all great at all things. There's so many things that I'm not good at. And so part of what I try to do to help address that and solve that is surround myself with people that fill the gaps that I bring to the table. Right.
Hmm.
So a lot of what I try to do is from a visionary standpoint is it's really just trying to see the big picture all the time. And I'm also a believer in servant leadership, and the idea is saying, okay, if I'm putting a task in front of you under your uh, under your responsibility, let's make sure that you don't have any barriers that you can't get through to accomplish that task. And if there are, talk to me, and I will help try to eliminate those barriers. And sometimes that means we don't have enough resources or the right resources for somebody's department or team to conquer something. So guess what? Like if we can make a business case for augmenting that team and adding a particular new person, well, that's exactly what we're going to do. And honestly, I'll say like a recent challenge that we addressed on the sales and marketing side of things was having a dedicated person that is going to be like the main focal for creating proposals and quotes and templates and things like that, and taking that off the operations side of thing, which for us traditionally that's the way we'd handle it. Like the ops folks would handle quotes and proposals, and it wasn't the most efficient way to do it, I don't think. And so that really has been a change that I think we've been able to improve the team by doing, and we did it by adding someone to the team, which is always kind of a big deal. We don't want to add to the head count unless it really makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the best leaders that I've had the chance to work with have always had the approach that, you know, they would give people autonomy to do their job, but also identify opportunities and challenges, and then put together a plan to attack those opportunities or overcome those challenges, and then say, "Okay, let's
Mhm.
do it. How can I support you?" Right?
There we go.
Because
Yeah.
maybe you have the domain expertise to take advantage of that opportunity, but you don't have all the resources that you need to fully do so. I can help with the resources, for example.
Exactly.
Let me ask you something that kind of is going to lead into the sales and marketing discussion. What would excite you more? Uh, Growing the business, let's just say by 10%, or optimizing your operations in a manner that would achieve the same result to the bottom line?
That's not an easy question, Mark. Jeez, that's a tough one because I like both of those. Well,
Okay,
first,
next one will be a nice easy lob, but
give me more of a softball for the next one.
yeah.
Honestly, hey, how about growth of more than 10%? That would excite me more than that. But I, you know what? I think the latter probably would excite me a little bit more, just in the sense that I think it would mean to me that we're operating in a really efficient manner if we're able to do that. And so that means less stress for everybody on the team. That means less friction on the team between departments. I think that means happy customers. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it that are all positive. Of
Hmm.
course, I'm not anti revenue growth, but sometimes, and we've certainly seen it here, when you get an opportunity and you're able to close a deal that is significant and really changes your business in some ways, the growth needed to fulfill that opportunity can be painful.
Hmm.
And so I'm never going to complain about it. And of course, we're always up for a challenge. But I would say that scenario would maybe be not quite as fulfilling for me as it would to, have let's just say the latter example that you used.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because in this industry, I've seen it many times where the salesperson or BDM or even CEO comes back and say, "Guess what? We just won this huge deal," and they're just totally amped, and the operations team is like, "Gosh,
What do we do now?
here we go again." Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
there
yep.
goes my weekend. No,
Uh-huh.
I don't. So, well, now jumping on to sales and marketing. I really enjoyed talking with you about some of the different tools that you've used, and
Yeah.
and feel free to mention any ones that you'd like to. But
Hmm.
first off, I say, I mean, you're the CEO, but you're sitting there talking to me about these prospecting tools that typically,
Yeah.
are used by lead generation people. So
Yeah.
first off, where does that curiosity come from, and how do you find out about these tools? And I mean, obviously you clearly have hands-on experience using them, so you're not outsourcing it to somebody
Right.
immediately. You're actually evaluating it. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a certain innate curiosity that I have when it comes to this aspect of business, and I think part of it's necessity. I I will say that right now I don't feel like we're doing an optimal job when it comes to marketing, and so I've invested a lot of personal time recently in trying to help make a difference there. Not that I'm better at it than anyone else. It's just that when something is a challenge and uh, I really want to have confidence that we're going the right route. I want to educate myself on it, right? And so some of that has come with working with partners, consultants. Failing has been a real educator and teacher when it comes to that, and certainly research, like looking at our past history and looking at other solutions that people that are good friends, colleagues in other industries, and also from our industry. So there's so many different sources, and honestly, being hands-on with some of the prospecting and sales activity, I think it's also expected in the role that I play uh, within the size of company that we have, right? So I think about one aspect, event marketing, right? And that's something where you and I have both participated and collaborated in some cases. And I think when you're talking about lead gen, uh, something that can hit pretty quickly is in-person type work, right? And now that the world has emerged very much from the pandemic, and we're having events that really didn't exist for a couple of years, uh, it's reminding me how valuable that can be. So
Mm,
trade shows, if you can attend a 2-day trade show and come away with 50 or 60 high quality sales qualified leads, like that's massive. To be able
right.
to not only come away with those leads, but also hopefully perhaps a good first impression and some sort of rapport or relationship, there's great value in that, especially if it's a fit for your company and for your industry. And so that's one aspect where I've really taken a look, and I think what we're trying to do is get away from what my company's kind of always done, which is, hey, we're all things to all people. We work in 30 different industries and we have all different kinds of customers, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's not a good marketing strategy, and it's definitely not what I'm trying to do going forward. And so recently we've gone through an exercise where we've taken a really close look at the results over the last few years of the business that we've done. And so what I'm trying to do is look at the industries where we've had success, where we've had good experience, where we are able to utilize the customer relationships that we have to get case studies, to bounce ideas off the customers with whom we're very close, and put together white papers and infographics and all different kinds of marketing collateral so that we can get deeper into those industries that are a good fit for us. And so I'm certainly not in a position where we want to say, yeah, we're going to turn away work from existing customers who don't happen to be in those particular industries where we're trying to focus. That's not going to happen. But at the same time, we can direct our marketing efforts toward industries where we think there's more potential and where we think our messaging can really resonate with them. And so from a strategy standpoint, that's something that's been interesting. Although I totally have gotten away from your original question, and I'm still with you. So when we talk
No, that's
about,
okay. It's okay.
sorry, man.
I get paid by the word, so just keep talking.
Oh, okay, we'll fire away. No, but when we talk about some of the applications that are out there, my goodness, it is overwhelming sometimes. The different CRMs, for instance, or marketing automation platforms, and I will mention a few. I think HubSpot is a huge ecosystem in and of itself, because when you talk about CRM, marketing automation, all that, HubSpot kind of does it for you. And I've been a fan of theirs for years, and we were subscribers. But I'll give you a specific example where I think they made a big mistake, and that was, we were doing a marketing campaign where we imported thousands of leads that were not part of our contact list, and their billing basis was on the number of contacts. So we went from, like, I don't know, 5,000 contacts to like 12,000 contacts in one campaign. And so suddenly our billable rate went up. I mean, my eyes popped out, and I'm like, well, guys, okay, well, don't worry. Hey, HubSpot, just a heads up, we've deleted a lot of the extra contacts, so let's go back down to where we were price wise. And they're like, yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
High watermark. High watermark.
Exactly. Were you working for them at the time? Because I think that's what they said to me. High watermark, Rick. Yeah, good luck with that. Sorry.
Industry standard, sorry, can't do anything about it.
And even though, gosh, we talked to so many people, they're like, no, we're not. I'm sorry, our policy is such that we can't reduce your rate back to what it was. And so for me, that was a deal breaker. I just felt like it wasn't good partnership. And so we did end up going away from them. Although I think they have since changed that policy. So I'm not going to completely close the door on ever working with HubSpot again, but it was something that, it was a painful point in time. So I do think they're a great solution though for what they do. But I'll say for us, for right now, we utilize Pipedrive, which I think for our CRM purposes works really well and integrates with so many different tools. And for me, I think that's a huge factor. Being able to integrate with, for us, our translation management system, our finance and accounting system, that's an important aspect of the CRM. But a huge part that I think is great is Pipedrive's ability to integrate with ActiveCampaign, which is what we use for automated email follow-up. Basically like kind of mailing lists. It is a type of marketing automation that we use instead of HubSpot, and it's super versatile. I think the price point is competitive. I think it's really intelligently done, and so yeah, we do depend on those two systems, I think, in a big way.
Does it give you insights in terms of like, okay, this many emails were opened, these links were clicked on. Okay, so hey, this person opened the email, they spent X amount of time, they clicked on this link. You know what? You should probably give them a call. Is that kind of
It is that kind of thing, exactly. So you can gauge the engagement level, like how many times did they open that message? Who are the people that did click a link? that kind of thing. Yes, yeah. To answer your question, yes. And I'll give you another tool that we have been dabbling with, and it's called Lemlist. And that one is another, basically call it a sales automation tool, because essentially what you can do is create sequential emails, and they can be customized based on your audience. So let's say you've got a particular email list that's meant for people in the oil and gas industry, and their persona happens to be, I don't know, localization manager, whatever. It could be any title that you're looking at, but you've got this customized 4 email sequence, and then you can either feed this tool with contacts you already have in your CRM. Maybe it's like a refresh campaign where you're just trying to reconnect with somebody that you haven't heard from in a while, et cetera. Or it could be somebody who's never heard of you. And that's something that you and I have talked about, Mark, and that is some of the tools that are contact generation or list building tools. So, Zoom Info is one of them. Ramped Up is one that I think is really powerful because it's got some unique aspects to it as far as contact updates, like on a regular basis. There are triggers involved with Ramped Up, and I'll just elaborate on this one a little bit. For me, I think it's one of the best aspects of Ramped Up, and that is if you have let's say you are a sales professional and you want to stay on top of what's going on with X number of key people. You have them in this database, and they're monitored on a constant basis by this application. So it will then, when it picks up stories or
They got a
social media,
promotion, for example, or
yeah, that's
something
it.
like, yeah,
Exactly. Which is similar data to LinkedIn, but for this one, it tells you, it makes sure that you pay attention to it and
pushing
that
it
you
to
can
you
react to it.
as opposed to you
Exactly.
logging in and checking your feed, right? No,
You get it.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I think about all these tools, and I think the another one that you introduced to me was Seamless AI, which
Yeah.
I'm using, and it's
Hmm.
incredibly valuable. Like I was looking for leads in a particular industry in a
Hmm.
particular region, just contacts, and boom. And I
Yeah.
tried the same stuff on LinkedIn, and I was
Yeah.
challenged. Okay, so see, it's just like it almost gave me too many, and I was just like, stop it.
Right.
Okay,
Right. Right.
I don't have
Right.
time for all these. But the challenge that we all face these days is even
Yeah.
if you have their name and their contact details, well, which is a huge advantage. I mean, because
Oh, yeah.
if you know somebody's name and company, and you can just go right to their LinkedIn profile,
Hmm.
oftentimes on LinkedIn profile they will have their company email address under contacts. Sometimes they
Right.
won't.
Right.
Using the email conventions, you can probably figure out what their email is. There's privacy rules in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed. I
Exactly.
don't want to get into that yet. Maybe we will later.
Maybe.
Um, but just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, I find that people are pretty willing to connect. But in terms of
Hmm.
responding to an outbound message, maybe my messages just aren't what they used to be.
We
But
can work on that.
the response ratio seems to be trending down. And I hear that.
Yeah.
In what are you seeing? And if that's true, then how do you work your way around that?
Oh, such a good question, and it's a difficult one to answer because there are no easy ways around it. Because I would say that my experience has been really similar with LinkedIn. I'll give you another example, Skylead, which is a tool that integrates with LinkedIn, and it allows for basically you can use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to identify a list of likely prospects that you'd like to connect with, and it will help you connect with an automated message, and then it will also do messaging on your behalf, right? So it's a similar tool to Lemlist, but just as you said, I think our sales team has had a similar experience where people are quite often willing to connect, especially with someone that has similar connections, connected to the same people, all part of the same ecosystem, but to actually engage and to become somebody interested in having a dialogue with you about the services that you offer. I think people just get overwhelmed. They get inundated with so many inquiries that they kind of shut down. I think it's really difficult to get past that for a lot of people. And so for me, I don't know. We've done a lot of A/B testing, and the emails that are just elaborate about, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, and here are the customers that we serve, and we think we're a perfect fit for you. I mean, you could have 4 paragraphs that are just beautifully written, and they can be completely ineffective, right? And
Yeah.
I think that is probably the wrong way to go, honestly. And so, in my mind, and this goes back to some of the different trainings or classes or influencers I've talked to regarding sales, it's about creating a sense of curiosity, right? And being brief about it. If you can create a message that is intriguing and it makes the person want to learn a little bit more, even if you can get one response, some somehow that can become something that can become then a dialogue. But to create that curiosity is a real challenge, and it's about saying, and let's think about this. Why do people change providers? Like, they've already got a solution in place in most cases, right? Why should they even consider something else if what they have is working? Well, sometimes it's cost, sometimes it's service, sometimes it's some innovation that they're not aware of that's out there in the market. So I think if you can address one of those three things or something else that makes them wonder, well, wait a second, you're telling me that all my competitors are doing something that I'm not doing and I don't know about it? Well, for God's sake, I mean, come on, let's talk. Tell me about it.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
You know?
Yeah, I have coached salespeople before. Exactly what you said. Be very brief. Who are you? Why are you relevant? And
Yep.
what do you want? So, hey,
There you
this
go.
is Mark from CLS, or Mark from memoQ. We work with
Yeah.
many of the world's largest banks, such
Yeah.
as blah blah blah,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
competitors,
Name dropping, exactly.
helping them to optimize and reduce
Yeah.
costs on blah 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 workflows, typically
Yep.
localization,
Yep.
something like that. It would be great to have a conversation to share
Yeah.
more information with you.
Yeah.
And people would be like, "Oh, okay, wait a minute, they're
Yeah.
working with our competitors."
Yeah. Yeah.
Oftentimes not, but sometimes yes. But I want to come back to something else that I'm finding from LinkedIn. I know you post on a regular basis, and
Yeah.
I'm out there making noise as well. I've had over the last year, I would say 4 or 5 um, legitimate, significant opportunities
Mhm.
from large multinationals where people have reached out to me and said, "Hey, who can I connect with at memoQ to learn more and to see a demo? We have this specific requirement." And I mean, a couple of them were customers that were basically on the cusp of they needed a tool and they were ready to select. But
Wow.
so it's not just about the outbound. Sometimes
Hmm.
if you're visible
Yes.
when people are experiencing that pain point, and you are the one that comes to mind, or your
Yeah.
company does, that's
Yeah.
important as well.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think a couple of the key words that come into play there are credibility and trust, right? So I'm a believer in the inbound marketing strategy. So that
Hmm.
concept of really creating a brand presence and um, having something that's going to engage people in the first place. And when they investigate more about whatever caught their attention in the first place, it leads to a call to action. That call to action hopefully is something that is valuable enough to them that they're willing to give up their email address. And then you are able to seed them, or plant seeds of more interest and curiosity. And throughout the process, you are creating credibility, hopefully. And when it's time for them to make a decision, they then have a higher likelihood they're going to trust you as a resource because you've got domain authority, because you've proven to them that you know what you're talking about, you're doing something right. So yeah, just as an overall philosophy, I'm a big believer in that, and that's why for us, again, like I said, we're trying to niche down. I think is a marketing term that I've heard before, because you cannot have a marketing message that's resonant if you are in all industries all the time.
We do everything for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. How does that make me feel? Like, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think of it from the perspective of myself as the buyer because, believe me, I get a ton of inquiries in my email box and in my LinkedIn inbox. And I try to give everybody a fair shake. Like, hey, if it's not a fit, uh, I'm not going to respond to everybody. I mean, that's just not realistic because sometimes they take a response as engagement and like
Right.
I'll tell them it's a deal breaker. But for the ones that it is intriguing, I will respond. And I will take a look at their messaging and how they went about it to get my attention, and I try and learn from that. I
Sure.
will tell you this though, if there's somebody that's really persistent and I want them to go away, the easiest thing to do is say, oh, I'm so sorry, but a dear, dear friend of mine sells exactly what you're trying to sell to me. And, hey, like I'm
Yeah.
just never going to work with someone else. And that pretty much tends to shut that down or nip it in the bud. So uh,
That's a
hopefully that's
nice little
helpful.
trick there. Yeah. I on the emails, I don't know how people get my email address, but it's every week I'll get like four or
Yeah.
five new kind of prospecting emails. And typically I'll just ignore it, but then they always come
Yeah.
back and I'll just say, thank you, but could you please remove me from your list? Or,
Yeah.
thanks, but no thanks, something like that. I mean, because I've been in their shoes before, so I'm
Sure.
typically pretty nice about it. But so God, we keep jumping back on the sales and marketing thing.
Yeah.
I want to ask you in terms of the actual sales role. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it can be challenging for somebody in your position to hire a good salesperson. Okay.
Oof. Yeah.
And one of the things is people do is they look at, well, does this person have industry experience? And if they do have industry experience, well, then why did they want to leave, and what's
Yeah.
going on? Or do we get somebody from outside the industry? And so,
Yeah.
how do you deal with those kind of questions?
Oh man, it can be so hard. I've made certainly my share, probably more than my fair share of hires that didn't work out from a sales and marketing standpoint. And I will say that my current VP of sales, she's a powerhouse, and I used a recruiter to find
Hmm.
her and to connect us. And yeah, she did have industry experience, and she's an incredibly hard worker. And I think that it makes such a difference, somebody with the work ethic, with the ability to think strategically, et cetera. But, a sales leader is not the same, though, as a salesperson or an account manager, et cetera. So inside sales, outside sales, there's so many different aspects to it. But I would say it does not scare me to hire somebody from outside of the industry or somebody without industry experience that knows how to engage with people, how to follow through on their promises. I think so much of sales has to do with that, is putting out a value proposition or saying you're going to do something, following through and earning trust, right? Even something as simple as saying, Jim, uh, I'm going to follow up with you in 2 weeks and hope you have a great holiday or whatever's going on. And literally in 2 weeks, if you follow up with that person, you've shown them that you're there. Like you're taking a step towards earning their trust. But I
Sounds
think,
like I'm gonna cut you off for a second, but it sounds like you've read my book. I do a whole chapter on the importance of building trust, and
yeah,
I say that in every sales situation, you have your direct objective, which
yeah,
could be doing a presentation, closing a deal, whatever.
there you
But
go.
there's a secondary objective of building trust, and building trust takes time. You
Yeah.
can't rush it.
Oh, yeah.
You can accelerate it by an introduction,
Hmm.
but or by doing something that you just said. And I say that whenever you leave a meeting, whether it's virtual or in person,
Hmm.
commit to following up on something. It could even
Yeah.
be a personal favor. Oh, you're taking a vacation in in Seattle. I live there. Let me give you a place of
Right.
that you should stop by and visit, and send that to them. But you've
Yeah.
shown that
Yeah.
you can make a commitment and keep it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off, but I get
No,
excited
no,
about that.
no. You know what? I get excited about it too. And I think for me, again, as a person that gets sold to, it's something that resonates with me. It makes sense to me. And so when I think about people outside of our industry, uh, there are so many people that are good at that don't know, per word rates and things like that yet, but they can learn that stuff pretty easily. And I think there are some really, really good training programs out there and organizations. So I'll give you an example, like ADP. So I think we're all pretty familiar with them, home
Yep.
security and other, similar services, et cetera. They have a killer training program and they really bring people up to speed. And sometimes those people want a different opportunity or they want to work maybe not in an environment of a very large environment like that. And so I think they can make really great new hires that you just teach them about the industry, give them good leads, and just pull the string and let them go. So I think that's one good example. I've heard from other people in the industry that real estate professionals can be good hires and successful salespeople in our industry. I have not personally had experience with that. And also, it's interesting. People with sales experience selling to the language industry other, well,
Yeah.
you probably got some experience there too, right? I mean, people that
Mhm.
are tangentially attached to it and can, leverage that experience.
Totally agree. And I didn't think about ADP, but it makes sense. I mean, if and they have a huge sales force,
Oh my
and
gosh,
if you
yes.
can pick up somebody that's been through that training program, I've worked with a lot of people that have worked in the insurance industry, and they do. I mean, the training that if you work for a company like New York Life, for example, the training that they get, and it's ongoing and
Yeah.
perpetual, just continues. They really learn how to talk to people, to that whole thing about building trust, but they
Hmm.
also learn. Because I mean, if you're out there trying to sell insurance, you get rejected,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, right? But you
Oh
have to
yeah.
deal with that, and you learn how to deal with it. And I would say a big part of sales is just having the thick skin, because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not personal,
No,
So,
exactly. But think about it, like every salesperson, how great would it be if you had 10, 20, whatever great leads in your inbox every week, and and you knew already that pretty much every one of them is going to be a good fit, and you just have to communicate with them, get a proposal out, and that's going to equal new business every time. If only it was that easy, right?
I can you imagine though back in the day, like when Microsoft starts selling, DOS and then Windows, and because everybody needed it, everybody wanted it, and
Exactly.
you're basically you instead of going from being a salesperson to an order taker, right?
Yeah.
But then again, you lose some of the advantages and benefits and
Of course.
compensation that come from being a rainmaker. So, you
Being a
know,
rainmaker. That's Mark Rainmaker Schreiner right there.
oh yeah, just coined a new nickname. Hey,
Exactly.
I know it's going to get twisted, and they're going to call me Rain Man. So hey,
You're an excellent driver, though, Mark. I've seen it. Yeah,
yeah.
excellent driver.
Hey, let me ask you back on the marketing side. You kind of touched on it, the importance of having a USP, or a unique value proposition or unique selling proposition.
Yeah.
And so, how do you articulate yours?
That's interesting. There's actually an exercise we're going through right now with a marketing company that we're working with, where they are actually taking a look at the industries, kind of our focus industries that I've identified, and they're taking a look at the the competitive landscape and trying to see, what, where can dynamic fit in, right? Like where
Hmm.
would they recommend that we fit in? Is it about, should we position ourselves as the lowest cost provider? Should we position ourselves as the experts in this particular vertical, et cetera?
I'm
So
going with that one. I'm going with that one. I'm not going to go with the lowest cost one. Sorry.
yeah, exactly. Especially when you're talking about super tight margins, it's not super fun to be,
Yeah.
the lowest price. No, and we've never been that. I'm just using that as an
Yeah.
example, but
Yeah.
yeah, or is it about innovation, et cetera? So, yeah, it's interesting, and I do think companies do need to look inward as to, what are we good at? Why should company X select you when they're receiving offers from dozens of companies all the time, or why should they stay with you, et cetera? So yeah, I'll agree with you that if you want to be the cheapest out there, the lowest cost provider, you're going to get a lot of business, but it's hard to keep all of that business, and there's going to be a rocky road you got to walk to do that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I mean, earlier you talked about events. We have one that we're collaborating on. When is that?
In
March,
April, is it March or
April.
April? I think it's April.
I think it's April. It is
Yeah,
April. It's right before Easter, right?
exactly.
Remember the dates?
Uh,
It's
Seventh, I
I'll
think.
put a link. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's
Thank you.
early April. We're co-hosting it with GALA in Seattle, and I think they're going to put it up on the website here real soon.
Yep.
I see you're searching for the date.
April
What
6th. I
other
got it.
events?
Yep.
What is it? April 6th?
Yes, exactly. It's on the Thursday.
Awesome, awesome. And there will be prizes, and
Yeah.
there will be beverages, right?
Yes, there
And
will.
yeah, I mean, I think that the event that we did in December, that was really fun, and it was great seeing people here instead of getting on an airplane and flying halfway across the country
Exactly.
to meet people.
And it still felt pretty fresh and pretty new in the sense that we just haven't had that many local industry events in such a long time. And we're fortunate, you and I, that we've got a really vibrant community that's focused on localization, translation, language services in general. So yeah, it's going to be fantastic to get together with, and again, having GALA as an organizer, a sponsor, participant, et cetera. yeah, no, I think it's super cool that you and I are able to collaborate on this. And yes, I can confirm there are going to be not just prizes, amazing prizes that are going to come up for this
Amazing.
one.
There's the marketing guy, man. I think one day when you retire from your CEO spot there, you're going to change your title to a sales and marketing consultant.
No, I'll change that title
guru. Yeah,
to long distance motorcycle rider and world explorer. I think that's more the direction I'll go.
that would be pretty cool too. But given in the world that we live in right
Yeah.
now, I mean, you can do both. Hey,
That's true. That's a
I've
really
had
good
calls
point.
today with people in Europe, New Zealand, and then in about 20 different places across the U.S. So all from the comfort of my dining room.
Which is
So,
awesome.
hey, well, Rick, I enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to meeting the other. We do have to do some pre-event planning.
We
So,
do.
yeah, I'll get that on your calendar, all right?
Absolutely. Count me in for that. Count me in for everything. And I just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast. It's always a good time chatting with you, and it's a unique way to do this. So thank you for the opportunity.
Likewise. Cheers, man. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for joining memoQ Talks, where we talked with industry leaders about their experiences and lessons learned to gain new insights about what works best across all areas of localization. Join us next time on memoQ Talks.